What's going on, everybody? This is Jason, and welcome back to the basement. I wanted to do a really quick brain dump because I be having these thoughts, and I'm like, what would be my ideal Fujifilm camera if I was to be a developer and make it, and engineer and make it myself? What would I want? My perfect camera would be the XF10 or XF20, right? I call it the XF20. And we do some updates on this thing. We do some innovative things. So here's what we do. First, you got to address this autofocus. It's horrendous. Great camera, and I still love it, but the autofocus is just horrendous by today's standards. If I compare it to the XS10, right, and any other camera I got, it's not even close. It's just slow, clunky. It hunts, but it's accurate, but it just hunts. Another innovative thing I would do is so this has the digital teleconverter where you can go from 28 to 35 and 50. I would take that concept a step further, and I would actually make a camera that have more than one lens, because our smartphones have that. They have more than one lens in it. And so what I do is I'd create a actual lens, a second lens in it, and I'd go from 28 to 50, right? Quiet. I'm on the phone. And I'd make a 50. And the 50 would actually be a lens inside the camera. So it wouldn't be a digital teleconverter in a sense. You'd still be able to use the RAW, because when you use the digital teleconverter on the XF10 right now, you can't use RAW. So it's all JPEG at that point. So that's where the limitation comes into play. Now that's not so terrible, but I'm also not getting the like when I say 28, I'm sorry, 28 and 50. What I mean is I want the 50, I want the 75. That's what I really want. So like the 50 f2 lens, I want that inside somehow, to switch between those two. Now, this camera is not going to look like the XF10. Because of that, you're going to actually need a lens that's going to stick out from the body. So it's probably going to look more like an XE4 with a lens on it that's just going to shift from one focal length to the other. So to have two lenses, instead of having a zoom, it would have two focal lengths, 28 millimeter equivalent, and then a 75 millimeter equivalent. So you'd have your wide angle, all purpose 28 for most people. And then you have a short telephoto to get some reach and portrait work. And I think that'd be a fantastic camera. And I'd put a flip screen on it. So flip screen, touch screen, bring back the D-pad, keep the joystick, and I wouldn't have the dials. I wouldn't have the traditional dials. I'd keep the PASM dial. I think that works for street situations. Somebody, listen, there are plenty of people who are going to argue me otherwise, but I think for a street situation, I've felt that this camera is a quicker in that regard. If you want to slow down, I like the traditional dials, and that works too. Either way, I'm comfortable, but I think the PASM dial is simpler to get to those modes and just be able to get there. And I like the dial structure on the XF10 because it just works with your thumb. This was one of the things that sold me on it. The APS-C sensor and the dial structure really sold it for me, because this is me coming from a G7X Mark II, which I loved for years and owned it twice. But the thing about it was that teeny little dial in the back. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. Excuse me. So when I got my hands on the XF10 and I felt that, front ring and rear ring with your thumb, it just felt more natural. Sometimes it's the little things that makes the biggest difference. I shoot with this camera, as terrible as the autofocus is, especially even when I compare it to the G7X Mark II. that was better all the way around. I still like this because it just the feeling of it. It it was just good. So anyway, that's getting away from the topic of this video is the dream camera. But yeah, I think cameras should have like like the X100 has the fixed 23 millimeter f2. But I think they should make cameras that can, it's going to have a bigger lens. So I think the form factor is going to feel different. It's going to feel like a bridge camera. But I think if you did that and you gave it two high quality lenses with good apertures, I think people would go for that. Go from 35 to 85, go from 28 to 75, go from, 24 to 50, those kind of combinations. And, maybe maybe don't even go XF20. Maybe go an X200, right? Let's go X200, X200, So 2 meaning for 2 different focal lengths in the camera. And maybe you have different versions of that, kind of like you have XCs and X Pros. Maybe you have an X200 and then you have an X, to something else that would have different focal lengths. So one could be the 28-75, when you can have a 35-85, and then maybe you have, like I said, a third, you could have the 24 and the 50. And you get those focal lengths in different versions of their camera line that would have 2 lenses in it, So I don't know. I'm shooting stuff out there. I got another idea, but I'm gonna save that for another video. So let me know what you guys think. If you got a dream camera, you got an idea for something that Fuji or any other manufacturer should do, what would you call it, and what do you want that camera to have in it? Let me know. All right, so see you guys in the next one. I'm rambling. Peace. Hope you enjoyed it.